Most days are pretty forgettable. But every once in a while, a single 24-hour period comes along that acts like a pressure cooker, a real stress test for an entire country. December 3rd, 2025, that was one of those days for India. It revealed some deep fault lines, but also some surprising strengths all at the same time. It was a day full of paradoxes, and to really get a handle on modern India, we need to unpack what happened.
So picture this. On this one day, you've got these two massive, completely opposite forces at play. On one side, you have a financial earthquake. The economy takes a historic nosedive. And on the other, a huge victory for digital freedom, a moment where citizen power actually pushed back against the state and won. So how can a nation be feeling the strain and showing its strength at the exact same time? It's a fascinating puzzle.
Right. So how does something like this even happen? What does it tell us about a country when its financial stability seems to be crumbling, but at the exact same moment, its democratic side shows incredible strength? That's the big question we're going to dig into.
Okay, let's start with the economic shock. For the very first time in history, the Indian Rupee crossed a huge psychological line. And this wasn't just another bad day for the markets. This was a financial shockwave that sent tremors through the entire economy. And here's the number that was plastered everywhere. 90.21 rupees to the US dollar, a brand new all-time low. But look, this wasn't just a number. It was a symbol of lost confidence. It meant the immediate threat of rising costs for, well, pretty much everything imported. And it was the moment India's currency officially became the worst performing in all of Asia for the year. So what caused this sudden crash? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of three separate, powerful forces all hitting at once. Let's break them down.
First, you had a huge amount of foreign money just flooding out of the country. Second, a targeted and unusually harsh trade tariff from the United States. And third, a deliberate choice by India's own central bank to just step back and let the market fall. Each of these is a major story in itself.
Okay, let's really zoom in on that second point about the tariffs. See, this wasn't some across-the-board fair play tariff. The U.S. specifically hit India with a massive 50% tariff slab. And as you can see, that was way higher than competitors like China and Vietnam got. It was a move that really singled India out, putting immense targeted pressure on about $45 billion worth of its exports. And that brings us to the third piece of this puzzle. You'd normally expect a central bank to jump in and defend its currency, right? But the Reserve Bank of India did the exact opposite. They went totally hands-off, signaling to the world that they weren't going to protect any specific number, not even the 90 rupee mark. This was a calculated risk, for sure. It preserved their foreign currency reserves, but it also allowed the rupee to find its own very painful new low.
So this created a really weird situation, a total paradox. There's this key economic metric, the rear, and it was showing the rupee was actually undervalued. That means, in simple terms, it was technically on sale. Normally, that would be fantastic for exports. But that massive 50% US tariff we just talked about, it completely wiped out any advantage. So India was stuck getting the worst of both worlds, higher import costs from a weak currency without the export boom that should have come with it.
But okay, while all that financial chaos was happening, a completely different kind of battle was hitting its peak on the very same day. Over in the world of digital policy, the government pulled a stunningly fast U-turn, which handed a major victory to activists and civil society.
So here's what happened. The government completely scrapped its order that would have forced every single new smartphone sold in India to come with a government tracking app called Sanchar Sathi already installed. This reversal came just days after the order was leaked, all thanks to a massive public and political outcry.
So what was the big deal about this app? Well, officially, it was designed to help you track a lost or stolen phone. But the concerns ran way deeper. This wasn't just an app you could choose to download from the App Store. This was state software that would be embedded deep into the phone's operating system, all linked up to central databases. Critics argued it created a direct pipeline for continuous state monitoring of a citizen's location and activity. And that's a step that, well, it looks a lot more like something you'd see in an authoritarian state, not a democracy.
All right, so we've got these two massive, clashing headlines, one about economic weakness, the other about democratic strength. But they weren't happening in a vacuum. Both of these events were playing out against the backdrop of a much larger, slower-moving crisis that was quietly shaping the nation's future.
On that exact same day, an expert analysis came out describing India as facing a deepening environmental emergency. And it wasn't a natural thing.
The report said it was the direct result of a decade of slowly chipping away at environmental laws and weakening regulations, all in the name of resource extraction and economic growth.
And look, this wasn't some abstract, far-off threat. The numbers presented to Parliament on that very day show the real human cost from just the Punjab floods. The numbers are they're stark. 40 people dead, over 7,000 livestock lost, more than 14,000 homes damaged. This is what policy dilution looks like on the ground.
And it's not just a one-time thing, it's chronic. We also learned that the Himalayan glaciers, the source of water for hundreds of millions of people, are retreating at a really alarming rate. This isn't about a single flood. It's a long-term threat to the water security of the entire region.
So, when you put it all together, the economic shock, the digital rights victory, and this simmering environmental emergency, what's the big picture? What does this one day really tell us about the challenges India is facing? What it reveals is a nation that's basically fighting a war on two fronts at the same time. On one hand, it has to defend itself from these intense global economic pressures, things like tariffs and foreign investors pulling out their money. But on the other hand, it has to answer to its own people, who are demanding democratic accountability and the protection of their digital rights. And these two forces are pulling the country in very different directions.
And that leaves us with this final, really crucial question. In a world that's full of immense external pressure, how does a country manage its economic survival without sacrificing its democratic soul? The events of December 3rd, 2025, they didn't give us an easy answer, but they framed the fundamental challenge for India's future perfectly.